Started. So again, welcome everybody and thank you for joining Marcum's nonprofit learning community. Today's presentation is Trends in Association Travel and Expense Reporting. My name is Karla and I'm in the marketing department here at Marcum, and I will be your host for this session. Before we get started, just need to go over a few housekeeping items. So just going to read through this disclaimer.
Next slide, please.
Marcum LLP and Marcum Technology are offering these materials as part of an educational program. The information contained herein is of a general nature and is not intended to address the circumstances of any particular individual, entity, or case. While every effort has been made to offer current and accurate information, errors can occur. Furthermore, laws and regulations referred to in this program may change over time and should be interpreted only in light of particular circumstances. The information presented here should not be construed as legal, tax, accounting, or professional valuation advice. No one should act on such information without appropriate professional advice after a thorough examination of the particular situation. And during today's program, you can submit your questions to our presenters using the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom platform. They will get to as many questions as they can throughout and at the end of the webinar. We will also provide a copy of the slides and a recording to the attendees post-event. And if you would like to receive continuing professional education credits for CPAs for attending today's session, you will need to be active in the Zoom platform for a minimum of 50 minutes and participate in a total of 3 CPE polling questions that will appear on your screen at random points during the presentation. A total of 4 questions will be launched, and I will put a message in the chat when they are live. There are no right or wrong answers, but be sure to select an answer and click submit for tracking purposes. And certificates will be emailed to those who qualify post-event. And now I will pass it over to Karla Jimenez, a partner here at Marcum LLP.
Hello, everyone. Glad to have you all with us today. Before we start, we will just do a quick introduction of ourselves. As Erin said, I'm Karla Jimenez, one of the partner with our client accounting and advisory services here in Marcum. I'm based at our Washington, D.C. office, servicing associations and other not-for-profits.
Good afternoon. I'm Buu-Ling Tran. I'm a VP in our financial solutions practice here in Marcum Technology. I have over 20 plus years experience supporting clients that are in primarily nonprofit space, work with clients to help them automate their back office accounting operations with systems like accounting systems, budgeting, AP automation, and of course, expense report solutions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Harley. I'm a vice president here at Databasics. Actually, today is my 23rd anniversary here at Databasics. So I've spent a good chunk of my life here working with organizations in the travel expense space. Again, similar to Karla and Buu-Ling, based here in the greater Washington, D.C. area. So certainly worked with a lot of associations and not-for-profits here over the last 20 plus years, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. So next slide. So learning objectives. So at the end of this course, the attendee will be able to apply best practices to address the challenges faced by associations and understand the emerging trends in associations' travel and expense reporting, and review how solutions like Databasics can streamline expense management. So expense reporting refers to the process of documenting and tracking business expenses incurred by individuals or organization. It involves recording, categorizing expenses, attaching relevant receipts or supporting documentations, and submitting them for reimbursement or inclusion in financial reports. Expense reporting is significant in financial reporting as it provides accurate and detailed information about the expense incurred by an individual or organization. This information is essential for various purposes, including budgeting, cost control, tax compliance, and financial analysis. By properly documenting and reporting expenses, organization can ensure transparency, accountability, and adherence to financial policies and regulation. It also helps in evaluating the financial performance and efficiency of an organization. Organizations face several challenges in managing expenses effectively. Some of the current challenges includes manual and time-consuming process. Many organizations will rely on manual expense reporting processes, which includes collecting paper receipts, filling out expense forms, and manually entering data into spreadsheets. This process is time-consuming and prone to errors, leading to delays in reimbursements and financial reporting. Organizations also often struggle in having real-time visibility and control over their expenses. This can result in overspending, unauthorized expenses, and difficulty in tracking and managing budgets effectively. The third would be compliance and policy enforcement. Organizations need to have a clear policy in place, communicate them effectively to employees, and enforce them consistently. Failure to do so can lead to non-compliance, fraud, and financial risks. Fourth would be integration with other systems. Organization may use multiple systems for expense management, such as the accounting software, a travel management tool, a credit card reporting system. Integrating these systems and ensuring seamless data flow can be complex and also time-consuming. Then with the increased trend of remote work and mobile workforce, managing expenses for employees working from different locations can be challenging. Organizations need to provide convenient and secure options for employees to submit expenses and ensure compliance with policies. Organizations need accurate and reliable expense data for financial reporting and analysis. However, many processes and human errors can lead to inaccurate and inconsistencies in the data, making it challenging to analyze and make informed decisions. And lastly, inefficient approval workflow. Approving and processing expense can be a bottleneck in the expense management process. Organizations need streamlined and efficient approval workflow to ensure timely reimbursement and financial reporting. Addressing these challenges requires organizations to adopt modern expense management solutions that automate and streamline the expense reporting process. It provides real-time visibility and control, enforce policy compliance, and integrate with other systems, and offer a robust data analysis capabilities. So we have our first poll. We'll give everybody a few minutes to answer.
So our polling question is, what solution are you currently using for expense reports? There are three options there: Microsoft Excel, expense solutions that is part of the ERP solution. So many ERP or accounting solutions have embedded as a module the expense report feature. And then the third option is third-party solutions. We're going to give a few seconds here. We love to see the results of these polling question for this polling question to see, what kind of systems our audience are using today. There you go. That's really interesting. So majority are using third-party solutions, and we are going to be showing a third-party solution today. And then second to that, still a lot of 35% are still using Microsoft Excel. I think Excel has their place. It's very powerful, it's very flexible, but I would say it's also very dangerous in some ways, working with Excel and the Excel formulas and, the workflow that's just not going to provide that automation that Karla is talking about. And then 22% are using it within their ERP solution. I think that's good. at least that is automated. You have a solution in place. And what's nice about using I think the ERP solution, if you can leverage it, because a lot of folks cannot, and that's why they're looking at third-party solution, is that it's already integrated with the accounting system. So,
Right. Next slide. Perfect. So a well-designed expense reporting system should include the following essential elements. The system should have an intuitive and user-friendly interface that makes it easy for employees to submit their expenses. It should provide clear instructions and guidance on how to submit expenses and attach receipts. With the increased use of mobile devices, the system should have a mobile app at least, or a responsive web interface that allows employees to submit expenses on the go. This enables employees to submit expenses in real time, reducing the chances of lost receipts and delays in reimbursements. And the system should also have the capability to automatically capture and extract data from receipts, eliminating the need for manual data entry. So OCR technology can be used to extract relevant information, such as the date, the amount, the vendor, any categories that can be extracted from the receipt, saving time and reducing error. The system should also have a built-in policy enforcement capabilities. It should validate expense submission against predefined expense policies and flag any violations or discrepancies. We talked earlier about the workflow. The system should allow for customizable approval workflow, where expenses can be routed to the appropriate managers for review and approval. Automated notifications and reminders should be sent to approvers to ensure timely processing of expense reports. The system should also integrate, right? If we're using a third-party solution, it should integrate seamlessly with other systems, such as their accounting system. Some are using travel management tools, credit card reporting systems. This enables automatic data synchronization, eliminating the need for manual data entry and reducing errors. The system should also provide real-time visibility into expense data through dashboards and reports. This allows management to track expenses, analyze spending patterns, and make informed decisions. Customizable reports should be available to generate insights and support financial reporting. Automation and digital tools can streamline the expense reporting process and improve accuracy in the following ways. Automation eliminates the need for manual data entry and processing. As mentioned earlier, digital tools such as an OCR technology can capture data from receipts accurately, eliminating the risk of manual transcription error. Automation enables quicker processing and reimbursement of expenses. With automated approval workflow and electronic payment systems, employees can receive reimbursements faster, improving employee satisfaction. Automation ensures consistent enforcement of expense policies. The system can validate expenses against predefined policies in real time, flagging any violations or discrepancies. This can reduce risk of non-compliance and fraud. Digital tools provide real-time visibility into expense data, allowing management to track and analyze expense effectively. This enables better control over spending, budget management, and financial decision-making. Last, the fifth bullet, automation and digital tool can seamlessly integrate with other systems, just like as mentioned earlier, enabling automatic data synchronization, reducing manual data entry, and ensuring data accuracy and consistency across different systems. And lastly, digital tools provide customizable reports and dashboards that allow easy analysis of expense data. This enables organizations to identify spending trends, control costs, and make data-driven decisions. Next slide. Implementing an effective and efficient expense reporting systems offers several advantages that can boost productivity. It will reduce costs and enhance decision-making within an organization. Some of the key advantages includes like time savings. Employees spend less time in on manual data entry and processing, allowing them to focus on their core responsibilities. Financial systems spend less time on finance teams, spend less time on manual review and reconciliation of expense reports, enabling them to allocate their time to more strategic tasks. It also increased productivity. By automating the expense reporting system, employees can submit expenses in real time, eliminating the need for manual paperwork and reducing delays. Cost reduction. An efficient expense reporting system can reduce costs in several ways. It eliminates manual processing, such as data entry and paper-based documentation. Automation reduces the risk of errors and fraud, and minimizing the need of costly audits and investigations later on. Real-time visibility into expenses enables organizations to identify cost-saving opportunities and then negotiate better vendor contracts and optimize spending. With an efficient expense reporting system, organization can enforce expense policies consistently and accurately, as discussed in the previous slide. Also, it enhances an efficient expense reporting system provides real-time visibility into expense data. By having access to accurate and up-to-date expense data, organization can optimize spending, allocate resources effectively, and identify areas for cost reduction or investments. Lastly, an efficient expense reporting system can seamlessly integrate with other systems. This ensures that data accuracy and consistency across different systems, improving financial reporting and analysis. Next slide. Thank you. So best practices. Here are some best practices for expense reporting. Establish clear expense policy. So that's always first. Clearly define your organization's expense policies, including allowable expenses, spending limits, documentation requirements. Communicate these policies to all employees and regularly update them as needed. Use automation software. Implement an automated expense reporting software that the timeliness that requires the required process from expense submission to reimbursement. Very important, provide training and support. Offer training sessions or resources to help employees understand the expense reporting process and software. Provide ongoing support to address any questions or issues that may arise. And then require detailed receipts. Encourage employees to provide detailed receipts for each expense, including itemized breakdown. This just helps with accurate documentation and facilitates expense verification. And then implement an approval workflow. Establish a clear approval workflow to ensure expenses are reviewed and approved by the appropriate individuals. This helps maintain accountability and prevent unauthorized spending. And then regularly review and audit expenses. Conduct regular reviews and audit of expense reports to identify any potential policy violations or discrepancies. Analyze expense data regularly. This can help identify areas where costs can be reduced or optimized. And then another important one, require timely expense submission. Set clear expectation for timely expense submission, such as requiring expenses to be submitted within a specific time frame after they are incurred. This avoids delays in reimbursements and ensure accurate financial reporting. We see more of this with individuals submitting credit card expense report from using a company issued credit card than employees submitting expense report for their own reimbursement. I guess when it's their own money, they're more willing to make sure that those reports get in and get reimbursed more timely. And then integrate expense reporting with other systems. This allows for seamless data transfer, reducing manual entry and improves accuracy. And lastly, keep employees informed about changes or updates to expense policies, the software or procedures. Regularly communicate reminders and updates to ensure everyone is aware of the latest requirements. By following these best practices, organizations can establish a streamlined, efficient, and compliant expense reporting process that minimizes errors, reduces cost, and enhances decision-making. And I think we have, I think we have another poll, or I guess
The
that's
next slide
slide.
is actually my slide. Oh, there we go. Here's the next poll. So our polling question number 2 is, what are the challenges with your current solution? We have some options here. 2, manual, does not integrate with our current accounting systems. And, Karla talked about having that solution integrate with the accounting system for efficiency. Cumbersome to use, not user-friendly. It could be all of the above or none of the above. And again, I think we would love to see how our audience responds to this polling question. So we're going to give maybe another second or so and see what the results look like. Hopefully, folks will say none of the above, right? That there are no challenges, but that might not be true. All right, well, there you go. Majority does say none of the above, that's 36, and in 5% says all of the above, and I wonder if that 25% correlate with the ones that are on Excel, because generally if you're on Excel, you do come across these challenges. So that's very interesting results there. Next slide. So Karla talked about some of the benefits with having an expense report solutions, talking about best practices as well. Where I'm going to focus on is now that we know the benefits of these expense report solutions and best practices, how do we go about in finding the right solution for your organizations, right? So what are some of the selection criteria that we may be looking at? So one of them is document your requirements that support your policy. So you have an expense report policies, you're going to want to document what are the requirements, since you're going through a review or an assessment process to evaluate what's the right solution. So as best practice is to document what are your requirements. You don't have to go crazy, we're not looking at, 50 or 100 requirements here, but at least, you want to do your homework and document some of the key requirements, and whatever those key requirements are, you wanted to identify them so that when you evaluate these systems, you're evaluating against those requirements. So you have something to evaluate them against, right? Item number 2 is identify the decision maker. If you have 200 people in your organization, you're not going to want 200 people to be evaluating an expense solutions, because that's not going to be feasible. So you wanted to narrow down who are the key decision makers that need to be involved in making that decisions. And you might want to look at the organizations and select a few people from various departments that may have some feedback into those requirements and be involved in that evaluation process, right? Because they're going to be decision makers. Number 3, identify solutions to consider. So Now that you have your key requirements and who's going to be making the decision, what systems are you going to, should you be looking at? And so I think that generally speaking, when we're working with clients will reach out to, the people that they work with. I mean, the consultants that they work with. And this could be the consultants are supporting their current ERP systems, or it could be, folks that are their auditors. Sometimes they will ask, what do you see are some of the systems in this industry, right? So you want to make sure that the solutions you're considering are solutions that are popular in your industry, right? You wouldn't want to select something that is a path that's least resistant. So when it's popular, it's also well supported. So you want a system that has been around, is well supported, it's popular for nonprofit, in your industries that are using this, and popular with as part of, they are partner with the ERP system that you're working with. Whatever ERP system that you're on, they are a third-party solution. So number 4 is define the process and timeline. So now you've got, okay, I know what 2 or 3 systems that I'll be looking at, right? I wouldn't, you don't want to identify too many systems, then you'll be in analysis paralysis situation. That's not what you want. So now that you've got the system, what is that process? And you want to define what that process is and identify that timeline. Are we trying to, from soup to nut, are we going to take, want to get something in by the 3rd month, or, so you wanted to identify what that timeline is based on people's availability, resources, and such. At least have a high level. It doesn't have to be in granular detail, but at least high level of what that process and what that timeline look like. Number 5, select ERP solution before expense report solution. So, there are some situations where an organization wants to transform. They're going through a technology transformation, meaning that there is a number of systems that they want to put in place, upgrade. And it could be, and these systems might include the accounting system or the ERP solution. It could be an AP automation. It could be expense report. So it's not just focused on one system, but it's part of a bigger project, an overall bigger project, which includes the ERP system. What number 5 basically said is that if you're in that situation where you're evaluating also the accounting system, is don't put the cart before the horse. So what we're saying is that you want to identify what the accounting system is first, and then look at the third-party solutions, expense report being a third-party solutions. And a lot of these expense solutions integrate with a number of ERP solutions first, but you want to identify the ERP solutions first before you do the expense. You don't want it to go the other way around, meaning you don't want to select the expense report and then figure out what ERP solutions that works with that expense report solution. So the order does matter here. So this slide talks about the integration with ERP or your accounting solution. Karla's mentioned a little bit about this, that you want a solution that integrates, but what are the integration options that are out there, right? So there could be no integration needed, and that would be the situation. Based on our polling question, there are a number of folks in our audience that are using the expense solutions as part of the ERP. Right? If you can use the out-of-the-box solutions that is coupled with the ERP solutions, that's the best. I mean, it's part of the solution. You don't have to deal with the integration. It will integrate seamlessly because it's part of that, right? The other option would be direct integration. So there are ERPs, there are expense report solutions that have that direct integration with the ERP, that seamless integration. And what that means is that depending on the systems, things like the chart of account and integrate, right? So if you create an account, it will integrate with the expense report solution. Transactions that are in the expense solutions will, be sent over to the ERP solutions. And when we say seamless, this is something that either you initiate or it is automatically done, based on how you set up the integration. Automatically done in the evening, it just syncs over. So that's what we mean by that direct seamless integration. Third-party solution needed for integration. So sometimes we also see situations where the expense report solution does not integrate directly. However, there is a connector out there that allows you to integrate your ERP with your expense report solution. So this is the connector that allows it to happen. So that is something that we see. And then lastly is a file import. So in some situation where the expense report can generate a file, from there you would then import that data into your ERP. So those are the different options that we see in terms of how expense reports can integrate with your ERP. And again, as you're going through the evaluation process, that's one of the things that you should focus is, how is this thing going to integrate with my accounting system, right? Next slide, please. All right, so let's say that you have identified the expense report system that best work with your organization. So now we come to implementation consideration. So what are some of the things to consider when you are now putting this solution in? So identify right people involved in the implementation. So the people that are decision makers in selecting the system might not be the same people that are going to be involved in the implementation. So you want to make sure you identify the right person or persons to help implement the systems, right? This would be on your side of the fence. And there's usually an implementation team from the publisher side as well. So that's one of the things you need to do. Resources. So as you're selecting people, think about, their capacity, what resources do they have, what resources is needed, what's the time commitment, and what's your timeline like, right? Because everyone in your organization will have a full-time job. This is just a project. So you want to make sure that not only do you have the right people, but those people have the availability and resources to implement this solution. The next item is change management. I would say of every bullet here, and our team have had a prior conversation. I think we all agree, at least on our team, that probably change management is probably the most challenging of all of these. And I always say that even though you think of implementing, let's say, I usually say implementing an ERP system may not be as challenging on the change management as it is something like an expense report. So when we talk about change management, we're talking about people at the end of the day, and changing on how people are leveraging or changing how the people work as they shift from one process to another process, using something as one technology to another. And the reason why I say that, implement, when it comes to change management, implement an ERP system may be even easier than expense report, is because you have an organization that is 20 people and you've got 2 people in the accounting department, or 30 people in an organization, it's got 2 people in the accounting department, right? So the change management, for the most part, it affects the 2 people and maybe a few more people that are in a management role because they have to access financial reports and things like that. But when you work with an expense report solution, a lot of times almost everybody uses an expense report solution. And if you have an organization that is a 30-person firm, the change management is easier than if you do change management on a 300-employee firm. And that's just the way it is, right? So that's why change management is very crucial. And when we talk about that, what are we really talking about, right? How do we manage, and how do we, are some of the things to think about when we do change management? And Karla kind of mentioned that, and they include things like the communication, right? Make sure you have good communication, timely communication that goes out, right? You want to make sure that also that there is training. So you want to, and it depends on the size of your organizations and how many people that need to be trained. You want to make sure that the training is effective. So when we talk about effective training, what are we talking about when it comes to effective training? So effective training comes down to two areas. There's the technical part of the training, and then there's the policy part of the training, right? So you want a system to be able, that your system that you are putting in, you want to make sure that it supports your policy. So when you do this training, it's a great time to not only train your people on the technical side, meaning how do I enter an expense report or deal with credit card reimbursement through this system, but what are the policy that follows that, right? So that's part of it. And then also, once they're trained, what about support, right? So that also needs to be communicated as to how do we manage support, right? And lastly, what about new hires? So when you have new hires, they're new to this process. What's the change management is going to look like for those people, right? So that's that. The next one, training. I think training and change management somehow does kind of play off of each other. And I just went through that. And then lastly, the review, the policy, again, as part of your training, I am a big fan of reviewing those policies. For example, if you need to have a receipt for every one of those transactions, that's a policy you need to make sure that is communicated to the folks that are in training of what these policies are. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our third polling question. I don't think we need to look at the results of these. We needed to have 4 polling questions. So this one is, what ERP systems are you running today? So here are some options. We're going to move on to the next slide. All right, so Chris is going to present this slide. Let me just say this. We have been partnered with Databasics, and we've had a very successful partnership. We have lots of clients that use Databasics and been very successful. And this is a technology webinar. So we're going to be talking about Databasics, their expense report solution, and we're going to be looking at what Databasics is going to look like. Chris?
Yeah, thanks you guys. And is the poll question still up, or?
No.
I've still got it on my screen, so I don't know if everyone can see it. But one of the things I just want to follow up that Buu-Ling mentioned was talking about, as you implement a solution like this in the change management and communication, we think that's probably one of the biggest things to focus on from best practice, because as we look at an expense reporting solution out there, it really is an employee-facing piece of your accounting application. So as Buu-Ling talked about, if you look at your financials, you may have just a select few that are actually dealing with that on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. When you look at an expense reporting solution, you now have really almost possibly every member of your community, and even some, depending upon the type of organization you are, you may have board members and summer staff and other folks that are actually accessing the solution. So, Karla gave the scenario earlier. She was talking about credit card transactions. If it's your own personal credit card, the importance of getting those transactions submitted, because you're trying to get it reimbursed so that you can go ahead and pay your credit card bill at the end of the month. Well, in an organization, when you have a corporate card out there, not all the employees understand the importance of getting those in based upon the deadlines that the organization set. So again, change management and communicating to the users why you're doing this, why you have these controls in place, why the reporting takes place the way it does, is really critical to getting buy-in within the organization as it relates to a solution like this. What we're going to do here is take the next few minutes and take you through an actual kind of an example of what a solution looks like. So Databasics has been providing expense reporting solutions here for about 25 years, really since the first web-based products came to market. And what I want to touch on are really the key benefits that organizations that similar to you guys will gain through these best practices that Karla and Buu-Ling have been talking about. As we look at that, one of the other areas we'll start talking about is the technology. 25 years ago, when the web first came out, most organizations were looking to transition from paper type processes, and the web gave us the ability to have someone enter information into a web user interface. It could then allow organizations to automatically route information wherever they were in the world. So it eliminated the need for us to have things like receipts and FedExing envelopes around and having people open up and do manual audits of it. It also allowed us to have the ability for us to move that data between that web solution into the accounting solution out there. So really, it was just taking advantage of the web out there and what the internet was providing organizations. Today, organizations are transitioning into cloud and SaaS-based deliveries, which is giving organizations the ability to eliminate the need to have installed applications, which allows us to more quickly deploy these solutions, which Buu-Ling was talking about, regardless of what you may be using from an accounting perspective and how we ultimately set up the integration out there. The fact that you can set these applications up within a matter of weeks or even days, depending upon your size out there, and have it tightly talk to the rest of your ecosystem is something we want to talk about. Obviously, web and mobile access. What we will show you here in just a minute is a web interface, so you can see the way it works, but everything that we'll show you in the web can also be done on mobile. Today, as we look at usage out there, we have organizations which have individuals that don't even touch PCs. They do everything through a mobile interface, and that really should be the norm out there. Project and grant tracking. We've talked a lot about the controls and compliance, and as it relates to what we're doing from a finance perspective, obviously you guys have your internal processes and details that you need to have captured. So we want to make sure the application meets your requirements as it relates to the financial information you need provided out there. And then we look at organizations that travel outside of the US. So you start looking at global requirements, whether that's multi-currency, taxes, depending upon where you may have travel out there, or for larger associations and not-for-profits, multi-companies environments out there. And then these are just things making sure that it'll support the accounting environment that you have set up out there. Karla mentioned OCR. OCR is a technology that's been out here for a number of years, which really is streamlining and simplifying the way that organizations are able to do expense entry, and I'll show you that in a second. But if you look at the next step, we're now going beyond OCR in that we now have a process out there where people can auto-create expense reports. If you look at what someone used to have to do 15, 20 years ago to do an expense report, it was a very labor-intensive process. You heard a lot of moaning and groaning from your user force about it. Today, we're getting to the point where we can have a solution go out there and auto-create an expense report. So if you have recurring expenses, like you pay people's cell bills or LinkedIn subscriptions or things like that, instead of having to go out and harass them every month to get those transactions submitted, we can actually create a process out there that it'll go out and auto-create it. So ultimately, that's what we talk about when we talk with organizations, is how do we go out and automate these processes? And so with that, let's go ahead and take a look at this, if I can remove my meeting request. And so the environment we're going to look at here is going to be an application that's going to take advantage of all the key things that Buu-Ling and Karla have been talking about here for the last 30 minutes or so. When engaging an organization, as we look at the change in the evaluation process, what you want to do is make sure that you have a very detailed requirements list that's put together up front. You want to make sure that as you're deploying a solution, you're always keeping your eye on the goal of what you set out to do. And most organizations are going to come up with 5 or 6 or 7 key items they're trying to accomplish out there. The big one, obviously, is making sure that you have a solution that is easy to use and easy to use for everyone, not just for the end user, not just for the folks in the administration, not just creating great reports for those individuals that need to see your reports, but really providing a process that is easy to use for everyone. When I first started working with organizations over 20 years ago, deploying an expense tool, what we found is that you would go into the finance and accounting department, you would get the requirements in the finance and accounting department, and they recognized that all the great benefits they had, and they weren't too focused on what the end users implications would be. And so today, when we engage an organization, we make sure that we talk about everyone, making sure that they're being represented. We still want to make sure you have some key decision makers out there. As Buu-Linh mentioned, you don't need to have 200 people providing input as far as what needs to take place, but you make sure that you have a dedicated list of what you're focused on accomplishing, and then you have a requirements document to work off. So when you go to implement, you're able to address everything that you'd set out to in the beginning. Now, as you look at this application, I'm looking at it here from an individual user. And as I come in as an individual user, there's a couple of things that are already set up there as it relates to communication. So we'll talk about automation a lot, but as it relates to communication, as I come in here as an individual user, I can access my company handbook. So if I have questions about corporate policies, I can go out there and very quickly access that. I can also see that I happen to have credit card transactions that are outstanding. Now, in this case, this application would be integrated typically into an accounting system, typically into a corporate credit card provider. You may have a travel environment that's integrated in here. But in addition to the visuals that someone has, you can also go out and automate the communication. So in this case, I've got 9 credit card transactions as we sit here on September 7th. If this was, let's say, later on in the month and I was not doing my job and making sure I was submitting these expenses in the appropriate time frame, my organization would start to ping me with notifications. And so maybe on the 20th, you start telling the users, hey, you've got these 9 credit card transactions. It's an automated email, and it's letting them know that they need to make sure that they get those details submitted in whatever the time frame you have out there. And we're going to build those same sort of communications into the workflow out there for approvers to make sure that they're approving timely. And you can also go out and automate things like reporting. So we were talking earlier about giving individuals visibility, where there's no need to have to go into these solutions anymore to get to the data you're looking for. You can go ahead and have budget reports set up. So if you're trying to see, what you've done or what you've spent on a certain event or a conference that may be coming up, there's no need to have to go in here. You can have the system set up and send yourself a report every couple of days to go ahead and notify the user out there. So we want to make sure we provide the user the information that he or she needs to see, but that it's also not only visually shown to them, but also making sure we're sending them to them through communications. Now, as it relates to the technology out there, Karla mentioned OCR and the ability for us to go ahead and get to data. And that's where we always like to start. All of the systems that you're talking about these days should have some sort of way for you to go out there and have an application not only pick up the receipts that are out there, but also read the data off the receipts. In this case, you're looking at a Hertz receipt. This Hertz receipt was imported into our application. Once a travel returned their car to Hertz, Hertz typically is going to shoot an email. We can have the user pick that email up and forward it to an email address we provide, and it'll drop that receipt in. We can even auto link it, but in other cases, I can come out here and take a picture of a receipt. So here's a picture of my Starbucks receipt. So the user is going to have a receipt library, which allows them to organize all the information, or I should say all the receipts that he or she has received over the course of travel or whatever other expenses out there. And ultimately, what we're going to do is allow the solution to read the data off that receipt and pull it all in. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm going to come out here and create a new travel expense report. And with any application, as we talk about requirements, we can define what organizations need to have within the individual solution. So in this case, I'll just say at the meeting in DC, I can pick dates of travel. So I'll just say we were traveling here at the beginning part of this week. Now, at the bottom part of this gets into the accounting and finance piece. And not all of you will need this, but certainly as we look at best practices, making sure we're meeting the needs of an organization. If you are allocating expenses against some sort of grant, project, fund, and again, it depends upon what the label or what you want to call it. In this case, I've got a grant. As a user, I can come in here and select a grant. Now, if it's integrated into your accounting system, we can have those grants and funds pulled over. But once I've provided this cover sheet details, I'm now in the expense report and I'm ready to start entering in individual expenses. Now, as we talk about automation and best practices, most applications these days will make sure the application provides information, makes it as simple as possible for the user. So in this case, as I come in to enter my first expense, I'm being prompted to be able to pull data in from those image receipts I have. I have credit card transactions. In this case, I've got a cash advance. The system recognizes my most frequently used expenses as well. So if I'm an organization that has a large list of expense transactions out there, we can make it so the user only sees the information that's important to them. The other thing we can do, in this case, I've got a pretty good size expense list. The other thing you can do with automation these days for a nonprofit or association out there is you can also control what expense types people see. So if you have board travel or bringing candidates in and they've got different types of expenses, you can set an application up so that it's only showing the users the expenses that are important to them. So if you look at something like an Excel spreadsheet, this is where an application that's going to give you automation is really going to give you some advantages over what an Excel spreadsheet is doing out there. Now, I'm just going to start with the OCR. So in this case, I've got this Hertz receipt. And what you'll see for a user is I can come in here and the application is going to read the data off that receipt. It recognizes who the vendor is. It also recognizes that because it's Hertz, it's a rental car expense. So it's doing all of the intelligence that you used to have a user go out there and enter. For some reason, it's still looking at time down, but it's doing all the intelligence that you used to have a user go out there and enter on their own behalf. The application will go out and do all for the user. So as I sit there within the application, here's my expense, that rental car. So as I sit here within the expense, it took the data off that receipt. It pulled it all into the expense report, including the mapping of the rental car, the amount, the currency, and what it also did is it pulled in the receipt as a supporting documentation. So for a user out there, if I'm doing a good job of capturing my receipts, whether it means taking pictures or emailing them to the application, I can go in here and basically select them all and have them drop right into the application. And at the bottom part of the page would be all the accounting processes as it relates to how this expense is being allocated. So from a user, what we're looking to do is to simplify the process as much as possible, remove as many opportunities for he or she to make errors, and then to allow this data to seamlessly sync over into your accounting ecosystem. And so for time purposes, I'll kind of show you another quick one just as organizations like to see. I'll do a quick mileage transaction out here. And so I'll just pick today. And so for mileage, instead of having to guess distances or having users go out and provide their own, an application like this will go out and leverage Google Maps. So in this case, if I need to audit where the person has traveled to, I can very quickly go out there and see the details around where I started the travel, where I ended the travel. So I've got a couple expenses in here. Any policy that needs to be enforced will be automatically enforced. I'm going to submit this off because there was no issue with that expense. My application allowed me to submit it on. It now shows that it's released and it's gone off into the approval process. And I'm able to come in here as an end user and see exactly where this expense report's going. We have a detailed audit trail, and I'm able to track this throughout the entire process. So this expense report is going to go off into the approval process. Once it's approved, the administrators or finance or accounting are going to see it, and then that data is going to flow over into the accounting system, depending upon however you ultimately set up that integration, whether it's a direct integration or a file transfer, and then the user would be notified of that process. But the big thing we just wanted to focus on here is as we're looking at best practices, is making sure that the application is going to simplify all of the key and critical elements as it relates to controls, compliance, integration, workflows, and as well, technology as it relates to automation. So with that, what I'm going to do is I will stop this presentation and head back to my PowerPoint for a second, if I can do there, and let Buu-Linh and Karla take back over here.
You're muted, Buu-Linh.
Sorry about that. We actually have a question here, and the question is, does this integrate with the QuickBooks Online system?
Yeah, really, I mean, I speak on behalf of Databasics. It certainly would integrate with QuickBooks Online, but really, at this day and age, I say any system you're looking at should have integration. Now, how that integration takes place is what's gonna vary. Buu-Linh had a slide there where she talked about direct integration out there. Then you look at file integration. So it really depends upon there's different relationships with expense reporting providers and accounting systems out there. And so you'll see there are different types of integrations out there, but at this day and age, everyone should have some type of integration. It just depends upon how manual that integration would be as it relates to what you're trying to push and pull data there.
Great. Okay, we have the fourth polling questions. Would you like to more information on this presentation? So we're going to share that. This really concludes our presentation. I just wanted to mention that, Marcum is very active when it comes to webinar. We have a lot of webinar every month, and a number of these webinars are CPE accredited, like this one. So the three that is right around the corner is revenue diversification for your nonprofit organization. That sounds really interesting. It's September the 12th, and then we've got streamline your month-end close process, deep dive into Tran ADRA suite. And so, you know, if you're looking to find a solution to help you with your month-end process, this is a great, you know, you might want to check out this presentation, and that's on September 26th. And then we've got digital transformation in construction, leverage technology for growth. So if anyone is in the construction or are interested in digital transformations within construction, this would be a great presentation to check out. That's in October. So those are our upcoming webinar. There's actually a lot more webinar. We just highlighted some of them here. And there is at the Marcum website, an event website, we'll have all of our webinars presented there. So I think, next slide, I think that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Chris, for joining us on this webinar as our special guest in presenting Databasics. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Erin, and thanks, Karla. Thanks everyone for attending. I hope you have the good rest of the day. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And you have our contact there. Thanks, everyone. Bye.